you know, how do you leverage that? Is there
It's 1:15, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. I think the posted board says 1:15, but we were supposed to start at 1, but we'll figure it out. I think we'll be okay. I don't have too much content, but really the purpose, introduce who we are, what we do, how prime contractors can get involved, how subs can get involved, and job work contracting. So, before diving in, show of hands, who is familiar with Jock? Who's done a project in Jock? Handful? That's okay. Hopefully by the end of this, everybody's gonna be like, I know what Jock is now. We can go ahead and get started. So, my name is Michael Judd. I'm the regional director for Gordian. I'm doing this on behalf of the City of Chicago and the Department of Procurement. We've had a long-standing relationship with procurement. We've done a lot of great work with procurement since 1992. Severin Siskowski is my colleague. He's an account manager in Chicago as well. But really for today, what we're going to go over is what is job work contracting in a nutshell. In the City of Chicago, for each department that utilizes job work contracting, what is their process? What are the benefits of job for both a prime contractor and a sub? How to bid as a prime. We're not going to go through too much detail with that because there are pre-bids that go into length on what that is, but primarily how do you get involved as a subcontractor. Especially if you're first starting out with Jock, you want to get familiar with how the process works. What can you do as a subcontractor to get involved? Finally, there are diversity and inclusion efforts that we have with our contractor engagement team. And then finally, reviewing key points with any questions towards the end. So, who is Gordian? Again, what do? We manage and facilitate the job work contracting program on behalf of Chicago. Those are the three main pillars of what we pretty much hold ourselves accountable for, which is our data. As we get into the presentation, you'll note that I will be talking about a construction task catalog. The beautiful part about job work contracting is it's pretty much like an indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity contract with preset pricing from our CTC. And our data analytics, our cost researchers, and our engineers put together that data for those job contracts. And I'll get into a high level of how they do that, but that book is over 275,000 lines, which is 4,000 or 5,000 pages of the book. So we're not going to get into the intricate details. You'll just be able to see what it looks like. But we also use our software. So once you do have a job contract or you're a subcontractor with a prime, there is a software that we use that holds all of that information so that you can build a proposal pretty easy. And then finally, the expertise. That's what we're here for, to be able to not only help facilitate the job program, but extensive training to help subcontractors and primes understand how to build those proposals. What is JOC? What does that look like? So there are over 300 programs throughout the country, over 8,000 contracts. But at the end of the day, there's almost 1,500 contractors that are primes, and there's several more subs underneath those. There's probably hundreds of times more, with $3 billion of volume just last year in total JOC. So it's growing, and it's been a big deal for the city for quite some time, but a lot of other agencies are grasping as well. So I'll get into that list throughout the area later on in this presentation. But really, it's just another procurement method for the city to use. So when procurement has challenges of, okay, I've got a project, I can't traditionally bid it because it's urgent, but I can't run it through my trade contracts because they're not under $25,000. JOC is the perfect fit for that. So if there are staff limitations within the city, they tend to use job work contracting. Meeting inclusion requirements for compliance, that's really critical. You heard a couple folks today, the new CPO, acting CPO Charlotte, is really going to hone in on that. Cost control and change orders, that's all in CTC, so it's very audible. Time, and then the procurement burden is really taken off due to the relative job size and the scope of work. So again, I mentioned that it's another delivery method. There are plenty of others that the city utilizes, but you're here today for job work contracting. The overview of JOC is pretty much once you have a contract or you're a subcontractor working with a prime, it's a very quick process. This process typically takes about 45 to 60 days. That's 2 months from inception to getting a PO and starting to order materials to get on site. In public procurement, that's expedited because you have traditional bid projects that can take north of a year and a half. Once the scope's together, once the specifications are pulled together, once the plans are finalized, take the contractor through RFIs, whereas in job work contracting, they have all of those details ready. Now it's just about pricing that job and executing that work. So this is generally the 5-step process that the city uses. Once you have a contract, you have a joint scope meeting with your client or whoever you're with at that time, where then they request a proposal. That's where you would build that proposal in the Gordian software in the city, where then the owner would go over your proposal using the CTC line items and saying, okay, I agree with this scope, talk to me a little more about this, what's your means and methods, and then issue that job order so you can start ordering materials and execute that work as quickly as possible.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Once you determine who you're gonna use, what's the general timeline between the award and or the due date and the award? So if it's due on the 5th, you're gonna award it about.
Usually it's maybe a couple weeks. It's very quick. It depends on the agency reports, but usually it's anywhere from a couple weeks to a month or two. So, all that talk for Jock, what is it, right? The long and short of it is it's a firm fixed price that's competitively bid, that's an indefinite quantity delivery method designed to produce a large number of multi-trade rehab and repair projects, as well as minor new construction projects very quickly. Now that's a lot of blabber from the mouth, so we like to break it out into 3 different categories. The first one is that it's a firm fixed price. So that CTC that has almost 300,000 lines in it, those are pre-priced by our engineers prior to getting on a job contract. Those are the prices that you'll be bound to throughout the term of the agreement. So if it's a 3-year term, you'll have those prices in the book for 3 years. But the beautiful part of it is, since you have a job contract, the owner can go to you at any time to ask you to build that proposal from those preset tasks. The second part of it is competitively bid. So you might be thinking to yourself, if the book has all the prices, how is it going to be competitive? Well, I'm going to go through at a very high level how you calculate your adjustment factor. The adjustment factor is what you would put multiplied by that cost in the book. So if you have a 20% markup based on overhead and profit, and overhead and profit, OH&P, then you will probably want to do a 1.2 factor to mark up that 20% off the book price if you're assuming that the book price is a 1. And I'll get into a high level of what that looks like in a little bit. But it's competitive because your OH&P is different from other contractors, and your ability to do work quickly and right away in this kind of program can dictate where your OH&P is. So it's really critical to get your adjustment factor accurate. And then finally, just it's a different procurement method. So if the department is comfortable with you as a contractor, or the contractor is comfortable with you as a subcontractor, there's going to be a lot more work because they have the contract, they need to procure smaller projects like this right away. So they're going to reach out to you to get your quotes and get you on site right away. So a typical construction procurement process looks like this. I'm not going to go through all of the details, but at a quick glance, it's 3 different projects: office renovation, LED lighting updates, and parking lot paving. All of them require the same steps if you go out for an RFP or lowest bid for construction, where you prepare the design. It takes about a year or a year and a half to get to number 10, and then the contractor's on the ground running for the execution. In JOC, all those documents come up front. The preset pricing is determined. The contractor bids their contract based on that adjustment factor. And then once that contractor is finalized and that contract is awarded, then there's one contract for all of the projects. So you see classroom renovation, LED lighting update, parking lot paving. You get several jobs at one time at the same time in job work contracting. Because it's a blanket term, let's just say 3 or 5 years for a maximum volume amount. In the city, one of the most recent ones awarded was a $10 million contract. So the base would be a 3-year, $10 million contract, and you can perform work either up to 3 years, or if your firm gets to $10 million. And that can be a variety of projects at the same time. Speaking of the types of projects, with that one competitively bid contract, these are pretty much the main kinds of job projects that we see. Straightforward new construction, which is minor, repairs, renovations, replacement in kinds if there's maintenance that needs to be caught up with. In the city, I will say the 2 biggest functions is emergency work. They use it for emergency projects and time-sensitive projects. So the catch, right, it's just that you're not going to get all of this work right away. You have to perform. So if you have a job contractor, if you're a subcontractor to a contractor, It's a performance-based contract, so there's usually a minimum contract amount that you're awarded. It's typically in the city about $25,000. Once they hit that $25,000, let's say it's just a small repair in a classroom like this, and you don't perform well, they do not have to utilize you again. They have primary contractors, they have secondary, they have tertiaries. So they can move within that range at any time. So the performance is rated based on the project development phase, which is your scope definition and timely and accurate price proposals. And again, we train you on how to do that, but it's not about playing games. It's about getting that contract and proposal auditable and ready to go. And then construction, timely startup, effectively managing the work crew, especially in today's climate with inflation and work crew sizes being a little smaller. It's really effective management of the work crew and your communication to the owner as far as schedule. So these are the actual specific measurables that are in any job contract. If you've never seen a job contract or have bid on a job contract, I recommend just download the solicitation documents. It's all online through e-procurement. There's other workshops on how to download those and look for those. But it's free. Download it for free. The bid deposit is what you owe at the time of the bid, but you don't have to bid on that contract. Look at a couple contracts that come out, not only in the city of Chicago, but any sister agency, just to get yourself familiar with what those documents look like. But in those contract documents, you'll see quality price proposals are measured. Usually it's a 1 to 5 scale. If they're timely, and then of course it's a construction contract, so you have to execute the construction. So quality construction and timely, and then the achievement of the M and WBE goals, as well as if there are self-performance or small business contracts as well. So the benefits of this program, it's a term agreement, maximum value law based on performance. So that's kind of the 3-layer approach is, as a prime, profit is a function of volume, and volume is a function of performance. So if those 3 align and you're doing a great job, the department's going to utilize you more and more and more because of that term agreement that you have. So the benefit of that is you don't have to go chase that work. It's steady flow for you as a company, and it's reliable for you to maintain your crews, to maintain the work coming through, and ultimately profit. It establishes a long-term relationship with the city, so you really want to keep it away from being non-adversarial, meaning you want to perform well. So if you think about proposals, you don't want to play games in your proposals. If you think about effective communication, let them know what's going on right away. Everything that's involved in construction now. And then finally, it's professionally rewarding. You get to say that you work in the city of Chicago as a job contractor, whether it's a prime or subcontractor. For subs, when contractors bid on these job contracts, there are no projects identified at the time of bid, and that's on purpose. The project scope is general in nature because it's a term contract. It's a 3-year, I'm just going to keep saying 3-year because I used it earlier, but it's a term contract. So because of that, the scope is the construction task catalog. And don't forget, I said the construction task catalog has almost 300,000 line items, and that's all priced out, every single line item. So the scope is the CTC. So when you're looking at job contracts throughout the city, the Department of Water is going to be totally different than the Department of Aviation or remediation. So you want to keep in mind what those scopes at a general level look like, and if they align with what you do as a contractor. If it does, then it leads to increased subcontracting opportunities because the GCs have to utilize you. They're going to have several projects at one time, so it's critical that they effectively manage that workload and meet their compliance goals. VBE is starting to come up in the city. That's also going to be a big deal, but M&W, it's critically important. So my point is, as a prime contractor, since they don't have those projects identified, they don't know exactly what projects they're going to get into. They just have a brief scope of work. So as they get those specific job assignments, they'll be able to reach out to the subcontracting community. And we'll be able to explain how to do that. So when you're thinking about prime contractors and subcontractors and where all of this fits, we like to talk about a job order contracting as an umbrella contract, where part 1 is the owner advertises the job, the contractors analyze and submit their bids, and then the owner awards that job umbrella contract. So now, great, congratulations, you've won that contract under job order contracting. Now the real work gets started with the several projects at one time. That's kind of part 2, where you have this umbrella with several projects underneath that umbrella. So, at a high level, we're going to go over how to bid as a prime, I'm also going to show you how to contact the prime or what they're looking for if you're a sub. So usually there are 4 books. There are instructions to bidders. This book is typically the instructions. It gives you a checklist of what you need to have a successful job bid and how to go through that process. Book 2 are the city's general conditions and special conditions. These are pretty much the rules that you're supposed to be held to as a contractor, going through all sorts of different stipulations of what the city requires, what they expect. So these are pretty much everything that you should be held to as a contractor and abide by. Book 3 is the CTC. I'll show you what that looks like. Book 4 are the technical specifications. If you're wondering, okay, you have these 300,000 line items, how do I know what those line items include? The spec book tells you what that line item includes. Also, the line item shows at a high level what it includes. And then book 5, there's a couple departments that have their own specifications that tie to what they want accomplished in the field. So those will also be in the solicitation if it's included. So to bounce to book 3, the CTC, usually it's a link in procurement because it's such a large document, but it's a catalog of pre-priced construction tasks, anywhere from Division 1, sometimes through Division 32, 33, all the way to 40. It includes local labor, equipment, and materials. So everything local in Cook County, Chicago area is included in that pricing, and it's customized for the city's tasks and needs. So like I said, the Department of Water is going to have different tasks and needs than the Department of Aviation. And then finally, as I mentioned before, the prices in the CTC are fixed for the duration of the contract. The adjustment factor is not, and I'll get to that in a little bit too, but this is kind of a small logo screen of what this looks like, but kind of following from left to right, you have your section 32, which is curbs, gutters, sidewalks, and driveways. It's formatted in CSI format. There's a description of what that task is. So under curbs and gutters, you have cast in place concrete curbs and gutters, where there's a full description of what's included. So I'll read it so everybody can see. It includes concrete, forms, rebar, chairs where necessary, and expansion boards. So all of that is included in that install price, which you see on the right. So the left column on the right side for total direct unit costs, that's the install quantity. So $7.18 per linear foot if you have to do 100 feet or 1,000 feet. And then the demo quantity of $3.23. Now, I made mention of the 100 linear feet versus 1,000. Just like if you go to Costco and you want to buy in bulk, you get a little cheaper. It works the same way in our book, where if there's quantities that exceed a certain number, then the contractor is liable to get that discount. So that's why those are called modifiers, and that's why it's in there. For quantities that are small, usually it's an addition. For quantities that are large, usually it's a deduct. So that's kind of how the book is set out for all divisions in the book. So as a prime, there's really 4 steps that we go through in a pre-bid. Number 1 is determining the direct cost. So it's analyzing the CTC and the specs, making sure that you understand its completeness and clarity. You want to review the CTC price versus your own price outside of job work contracting. And then what do you have to do as far as OHP? Do you have to increase the adjustment factor? Is the book generous for you as a company, and can you even go a little lower? So it really depends. So moving into that step, you want to determine your overhead costs. In the CTC, there are pages 1 through 6 that have rules. For example, you cannot have a lift for work under 14 feet. That's a rule that's in the CTC. So you have to make sure that you account for that. But also bonding, insurance, staffing. You can't charge for staffing in the proposal because that's in your adjustment factor. So you want to ask yourself all of those questions. In the city, there are 2 adjustment factors. There's a normal working hours factor and an other than normal working hours factor. So normal hours is throughout the day, normal construction activity. Other than normal working hours is overtime. And finally, specifying the EEO commitments and determining the award criteria figure. Once you understand your factors and what you're comfortable with as you go through a couple projects, on those instructions, there are checklists from 1 to 21 that details how you figure out that award criteria figure. And that's specific for the city of Chicago. The lowest award criteria figure is the one awarded a job contract. So, how to go about this at a really high level? You want to select a comparable project from your portfolio. Let's say the project that you selected paid you $82,000. You're building that proposal from the CTC in factor of 1 because you're just taking it dollar for dollar right now. and the price from the CTC comes out to 75,000. And you're asking yourself, okay, the CTC is a little lower than my pricing, but you need to keep in mind that does not include your OH&P. So then you include, let's just say 20%, or let's just do 8% for this to cover up to the 82,000. Divide those numbers and you're gonna come up with an adjustment factor of 1.08. So on this particular job, you would bid on that job contract of 1.08. Now the idea is you're not just doing it for one project, you're gonna do it for several, so that you can see what that range is. Let's say if you have a range from 1.05 to 1.15, then somewhere in the middle, you might be comfortable bidding on that job contract at that time. So you wanna keep in mind of how you kind of go through this. We go into much greater detail at pre-bids. I highly suggest, even if you do not intend on bidding a job, to join a pre-bid. Because then you'll be able to see what that looks like. You'll be able to have that conversation if you're a sub with the prime contractor and know what they're doing to get awarded the job contract. So finally, bidding as prime contractor tips to be successful. You want to anticipate the kind of work the city has. Again, you're going to know in a nutshell with the Department of Water what they're going to do. They're going to work on their storage tanks, on their facilities. They're not going to do road work and structural work. So you want to keep that in mind. As I mentioned at the pre-bid meeting, there are detailed line items. It's usually about an hour that we go through of how to bid on that specific job. Analyze the prices from the CTZ versus what you have. And then you want to make sure that your staff's correctly to handle it. If there's, for example, 2FM awarded a job contract earlier this year, it was a $300 million contract. Can you as a company execute that amount of work in 3 years? If the answer is no, then maybe you're a good fit as a subcontractor. But if another department issues a $5 million job contract, like the Public Safety and Administration or OEMC, that might be a good fit for you if that's your line of work. So get involved. You want to analyze these job programs in the Chicago area, identify those programs that fit your scope of work. For the primes, analyze the prices in the CTC, and then for subs, establish that relationship. So as a subcontractor, how do you get involved? Right? That's the biggest question that we always get as a subcontractor. How do you get involved in job work contracting? You need to absolutely contact us and contact the awarded job contractors that have job contracts right now. I cannot stress that enough. What they want to see is they want to see your portfolio and your previous projects completed. Getting your certification is a big deal. If you haven't gotten that, please start that process. But provide the contacts and references that you've worked with in the past. That's going to help you prove your value as a subcontractor. You want to attend their outreach events and networking. There's a couple contractors here today that work here that are talking to subcontractors. They're always looking to expand their subcontracting community. So please make sure that you network with them and you attend their outreach events. And be mindful of how the contractors contact you. They might just shoot you an email one day asking for, hey, it was nice to meet you at the symposium 2 weeks ago. I have a project, let's see what your pricing looks like. Some may direct you to Building Connected, some may direct you to Blue Book, or just cold call you, hey, I need a price by the end of the week. They may ask for references from those. But the biggest thing, because it's a relationship community, is the word of mouth. If you've performed well for a contractor in the past, they're going to use you again. And then you can use that to build your portfolio and contact other contractors. That's a really big advantage. So tips to keep in mind when you're talking with a prime. Number one, in job order contracting, I mentioned that it's about a 45, 60-day window from project inception to a purchase order or a blanket release in the city. So it's not a year and a half. There's not a whole RFI process because the contractors already are going through that at that moment. So as a subcontractor, you have to expect to turn around your pricing fast and responsible. There's really not a lot of room for a lot of negotiation. It's submitting your price that you're comfortable with to get that work done. And they might ask for a different variety of ways to do that. They might ask for just a lump sum, just so they can compare. They might want to break that scope out because they may want to use you for some of that scope and another contractor for another piece. So understanding that scope of work so you can submit accurate pricing is critical. Again, as I mentioned, obtain and hold M&WBE certifications. The city recently changed to, if you have an M&WBE certification, it's perpetual. You just have to renew it every year instead of it expiring and then being done. And then the agreement and understanding the JOC terms in the prime contracts is probably one of the most important. There are terms once the PO does come and they sign you on the contract, and this goes for any kind of work that you do. You've got to make sure that you understand that contract because the contractor will hold you to those terms, which includes bonding and insurance capacity requirements and things of that nature. And then finally, payment timelines and capacity. You've heard a big deal about how the city is trying to expedite some things. I can tell you that the city has been actively trying to do this and they're working on some changes currently. But either way, because of the waivers and ensuring that compliance is met, confirming that the contractor is not playing games with their subcontractors, the reality is the payments are not made to the prime very quickly. The reality is it takes some time. It might take 30 days, it might take 60 days. So as a subcontractor, it's important to know what's in that contract, if it's net 30 or if it's paid when paid. You want to make sure you understand what that looks like. Retainage is held on a project by project basis. So even if you submit a 100% bill, they may ask you to hold 10% back because that's what they're held to. Subcontractor upkeep of certified payroll is a big deal. That's the website for the City of Chicago Certification and Compliance System. I can tell you firsthand experience, they make the contractors fill this out and have their subs enter their data before they pay the prime. So if you're holding up that process, the prime's not going to get paid. And then finally, providing all the waivers, partial and final waivers, that's a part of the construction management and public procurement. So you want to make sure that you understand those terms and conditions in that contract and understand that even though the city is working diligently on closing the gap, there is still going to take some time to process payments to prime contractors. It's not private where you get the work done and they pay you that day or the next week. So JOC programs in the City of Chicago, these are these 6 departments that currently use it. Department of Fleet Facilities Management has 2 bureaus. The first bureau is AEC. That is pretty much fleet and facilities throughout the City of Chicago for fire departments or agencies downtown. EHS is a remedial contract in the city, so that's very different. Even though it's under 2FM, it's still a very different contract. Aviation's got a JOC contract. Department of Water has a JOC contract. CDOT has a JOC contract. I will throw out there, because it's public, that CDOT has a flat work contract on the street right now. If you're interested in flat work, at least download the solicitation and see what they look like. It's not going to hurt. And then OEMC. These are some other Chicagoland area JOC programs that we've had or have right now. Please keep in mind that this is for informational purposes only. This is a city-held function through the Department of Procurement, but it's just information for you so that you can still branch out to other programs and look at their JOC programs, look at their JOC contractors, and their execution procedures and instructions are different from the city. But this is just for informational purposes only. So our contractor engagement team, this is what we'll wrap up with. Gordian provides best practices around compliance in the City of Chicago. This might not be your first time hearing me. We go to outreach events all the time. We were just at a Hacia event 2 or 3 weeks ago. We plan on doing other events. We talked at the Cook County Expo earlier this summer. We were here, I think it was this room, back in the spring this year. So we are constantly on the road trying to expand the JOC pool. Because we know that an enhanced JOC pool and reaching out in the community is important for the constituents that we have. Aldermen, commissioners, deputy commissioners, procurement most importantly. So we have developed and maintained relationships with all of these agencies, even some that are in the room in here today, and we leverage those relationships to go in and talk about job order contracting. That's our contractor engagement team. That's what they do. So if you're interested in getting into job order contracting, please give me your information. Not only will I give your information to our contractor engagement team, but I personally will also reach out and give you a list of contractors that have JOC contracts in the city at this time. Now, I'm not going to read all that because I think we're close to time. These are some of the organizations and associations. Hacia was here. I believe I saw Black Contractors United here. National Association of Women in Construction. So keep these in mind too. We present at those agencies all the time. So, as a review and key points before we get into some questions, if you have any, JOC is an established procurement method in the City of Chicago. There are several different types of ways that the city uses job order contracting. These are the 5 steps once you have a JOC contract as a prime. The procurement process is very quick. They depend on you and they depend on your pricing to get the work done and get in the field as fast as possible. JOC has benefits for all parties, not only for the prime contractors, but they have to go to the subcontracting community, and most importantly, the owner needs the work done. So it involves everybody. It's a team effort. Performance is based on that contracting system that's in the general conditions, and JOC is performance based. So you want to keep that in mind. Be aware of the tips and methods used, not only to bid successfully on a JOC contract, but also to reach out to a prime and know what they're looking for, know what they want, and review their terms to make sure you're aligned with them. And then finally, just be ready to perform at a high level. It's all about performance in job order contracting. So to find out more information, sign up for the DPS alerts. That's the information. I'll leave this up for 30 seconds. The DPS alerts, what's beautiful about them, I signed up for them because I like to see all the alerts and what's going on. If you had signed up for DPS alerts, the symposium should have been shot out to you plenty of times leading up to this event. Not only that, but JOC contracts go through this DPS alert system and other contracts. So I'm here for job order contracting, Severn's here for JOC, but this is a testament for the entire city contracts and traditional bid or trades, whatever they have. That's the website link. I'll leave it up for another 5 seconds, but under the bid proposal information, click on the current bids and requests for proposal. There's always a list of all proposals of all things outside of JOC and JOC. And then newspaper still does it as well. I think the issuance goes out on Friday and gets cut the next week, so they're always in there too. Key contacts, again, my name is Michael Judd, I'm the regional director. I've got my business cards here too, but feel free to take a picture of this. The account manager for the City of Chicago is Christiane Jobs. She's traveling with her daughter right now, so she couldn't be here, but that's her contact information. She is our field representative for the City of Chicago, so she's probably a person starting next week that you can contact a little quickly. And then finally, Kelly Erickson is our contractor diversity, equity, and inclusion manager. She's a part of our contractor engagement team, and we provide all the information to her. With that, any questions on job order contracting?
Yeah, you mentioned the pre-bid meeting. How do we join this? How do we go to these?
So if you download the solicitation from eProcurement, it shows you where that pre-bid is. So, and it depends. The City of Chicago likes to do them in person, but there are some pre-bids that are in a link. Zoom, Microsoft Teams, what have you.
Okay, thank you.
All the information is there.
I've seen the adjustment factor like on YouTube, but where could we go to like get abreast of those things?
That's a great question. First off, feel free to reach out to us and we can help point you in that direction, but also on our website, we just created for contractors. So if you click that link, it'll give you all sorts of information that can help you look at how to calculate your adjustment factor. On Gordian.com, there's a calculation. If you just throw in a number, it'll help you calculate those factors for you. So we have plenty of resources on our website and us.
Question on the proposal that you showed in Excel, so it had the task items and then the quantities?
Yes.
Just to make sure I understand that right. So does that come out of the pre-bid meeting that the city would then give to us? Or are we coming up with those line items?
So the line items would be in the book, but you didn't have to create your own workbook, your own Excel.
Okay.
Right.
But
However,
do they give you that scope of work, like the metal sheets or metal studs? And
all of that is in the CTC. So if you took a project that you've done in the past outside of JOC, you know your price for that, what you were comfortable with. And then you want to try to build that proposal out, you would go into CTC, find those line items, calculate all of it down and see that bottom line number, and then divide those to see technically what your factor would be on that project.
Okay. So each prime that would be bidding on, say, this project, they could come up with different line items in their
They could,
proposals,
you're
right? Okay.
Yep.
So like in the pre-bid meeting, we're sitting in there and you say you want to redo these 3 walls. It could be different line items that you're saying I need to get paid for. that.
Means and methods, things like that. Yeah.
Gotcha, okay.
Now, we don't ask the contractors to go through that at the pre-bid meeting. Really the intent is at a greater detail, here's the page that you have to do it, here's how you do it, the resources that you have.
Okay.
So then you take it back and do your own analysis.
Take off some.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
So, how do we distinguish the difference between a job contract and a contract? That makes sense.
Well, all the contracts are publicly solicited on the websites, and it is, most of them, in my opinion, are very clear, and it says job order contracting.
Oh,
So if you look on City Procurement's website, if you go to the awarded contracts, instead of, if you go to, let me get there, that website, it'll take you to a page that you can click on current bids and requests for proposals and awarded contracts. If you click on the awarded contracts one and type in job order contracting, you can see all the contracts that have been awarded.
okay,
And not only that, but it might be different for other agencies too.
okay. And one other question.
Yep.
For someone like myself who is new to calling for the first time, what does that process look like? Say, okay, I have a job contract that I want to bid, and I'm calling you guys. What does that process look like?
So we can help with how to aid you in developing your adjustment factor. We just can't get into details of the pricing and what that looks like. So we can show you some of the information that we have. We can walk through that process of, here's, this is what you would do from this book. You would take your line items you're comfortable with in a format that you're comfortable with. And then hopefully at that point, hand it over for you to start doing your own calculation.
I just want to be clear as to what to expect when you call me.
Yep, yeah, unfortunately, we can't get involved obviously in the pricing of it, but definitely.
So where do we find the CTC?
Yep.
Where do we find these books?
That's a great question. So every solicitation that goes on e-procurement has the CTC in it.
E-procurement.
Yep, so sign up for the DPS alerts. Also, if you give me your contact information, I'll give your contact information to our contractor engagement team. One of their responsibilities is to shoot out notifications to the contractors that they have that there's a job contract out. So once you get that notice, whether it's from Gordian or whether it's from this website, then you can look at that solicitation, download all the documents, and you'll see the CTC right there in a PDF format. Now, once the contract is awarded, then that goes away, but it's still in the system for that active contractor. So if you're a sub, they may ask you to maybe take a look at it, or there might be a variety of ways that they ask for the price. But the best way is we cannot legally provide the CTC unless it's in an open solicitation.
Jack is only for construction, or is it for medical as well?
We do medical work, but typically it's construction in the medical setting. So we don't purchase the equipment of medical, but we'll renovate a room,
Okay.
X-ray rooms, things like that.
Okay.
Lead doors.
So the supply side, not the personnel.
Right, yeah, so in JOC you can't purchase the supplies. Usually there's other term agreement contracts that have that, but if the room needs to be renovated for that, for those supplies, then construction wise, you can do JOC.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, we have a JOC contract with, we just had one with, Northwestern Medicine.
Mhm.
A job, I think, was it Northwestern?
Yeah,
Okay.
Northwestern University.
Oh, it was University, okay, I'm sorry. I thought I saw a hand over here.
Yeah, so if the CTCs are attached to the specific solicitation, is it possible that the CTC price line items change based on the project or department that it's for?
Great question. The CTC line items do not change. However, based on means and methods, if you choose a certain number of line items, another contractor may choose a different set of them,
Gotcha.
depending on how you plan on executing that work. So the prices don't change, but it depends on what line items you choose. Okay.
One more.
Yes.
As a sub, is there a minimum or maximum that you can supply a number for to a prime?
No. Unless the prime has minimums, but in JOC there's no stipulation for that.
So one sub can have more than one project at the same time?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
And do you have a sign-up sheet or something like that for our information to give to you?
For the general construction projects?
Well, you said when we give you our information and you pass it along.
Yep.
So do you have a sign up sheet or something?
I don't have a sign-up sheet, but if you give me your business card,
Yeah.
I'll be able to shoot you our contact info, and I'll also shoot more information to our team. So that actively, proactive, whatever you wanna call it, kind of is a sign-up sheet.
Okay.
So, sorry. I hope that helps. That's not a bad idea though. We could probably start doing a sign-up sheet. Yeah.
Is there a minimum amount of years of experience required?
There's not. That's a great question. In job work contracting, if you're interested in that kind of contract, in the city it's lowest award criteria, but there are other sister agencies that award several different contractors. So if you are interested in that, the number one thing is you don't have to have prior job experience. We have a team that's dedicated to train you through the system, train you through job, get you comfortable with the system.
How do you get, will that information be provided once you send out the contact information? If we wanted to be involved in that training,
So there are different kinds of trainings. There are higher level trainings that are outside of the system. We can only grant access to contractors to job contracts if you have a job contract, unfortunately. But there are webinars and things that you can join in on to see how the process flows though. So we can give you all those resources now.
okay.
But
yeah.
as far as access to the system, unfortunately we can't do that.
How do you, what's the webinar information?
They get shut out by our contractor engagement team, or if you go to Gordian.com, and I can include this too if you want to give me your contact information, I can point you out where to go. But in Gordian.com, there's contractor resources for all of those. You can even click on the webinar and review it yourself. And,
Okay.
yeah. Great questions. Anybody else? It's 1:58, so we got to 2 o'clock. We saved the next group some time, I think. No. What's that? You're right, I did. Went through a little more quickly, but look, Gordian takes this really seriously with the outreach and trying to get additional contractors in the pool. So please, we'll be around in the auditorium. I'm here with Severance here. Please give me your contact information. We'll do the best that we can to try to connect you with the contractors. Yep, we do. It's called Gordian. All the numbers. Thank goodness you're here. All right, well, thank you for your time. Very much appreciate it. Good luck. Let me know if you have any questions, please.